Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wisconnect, connecting you with the art of data visualization and storytelling. My name is Sagar Kapoor. I'm part of customer success team at Tableau. So Wisconnect helps you in connecting with the art of data visualization and storytelling. So far, we have hosted more than 50 sessions, over 10,000 people we have onboarded on our platform. And this has been possible with the help of our amazing Tableau community. So thank you to each one of them for coming on our platform and sharing their knowledge with all of us. And one thing which I'm excited about Wisconnect, it's the impact it's creating. Literally, I'm able to track how people are getting started with Tableau, learning from best practices, and connecting with each other. We have a YouTube channel. Go ahead, subscribe to it. Some amazing content waiting for you. We have our LinkedIn group. Go ahead, join this group, connect with each other, and learn from each other. And now let's see what's trending in our data farm. So the IronWest results were out last week, and congratulations for the top 10. Some amazing over 370 visualizations were published with respect to IronWest. So congratulations for everyone for participating in this amazing initiative. Shout out to Simon Buman, Alex Jones, and Christian Flex, our top 3 finalists for IronWest. And the best part for us is that there are over 370 IronWest entries, which we can go ahead and just download it, do reverse engineering just to understand how they have gone ahead and created their visualization. So I will go ahead and share that link with you. So the Tableau conference is coming. It's in the first week of October. Go ahead and register it. It's 100% free and virtual this time. And we will be hosting it in 3 different time zones. So register it fast. And even Makeover Monday will have a live Makeover Monday on October 5th. Do remember to go ahead and register to it. With that, let me go ahead and introduce to our speakers, Zak Geis and Michael Simons. So Zak is a leader of Tableau COE for JP Morgan Chase and has been using Tableau for almost 10 years. He was recently selected as a member of the first Tableau DataDev Ambassador group and has extensive knowledge on Tableau APIs and Tableau Server. So Zak will be talking about extending Tableau with the APIs and DataDev program. So without further ado, Zak, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sagar. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and pop over into our awesome friend PowerPoint, everybody's favorite. Awesome. So thanks so much, Sagar, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity here to talk to everybody. Appreciate the introduction. Again, I'm going to talk about a little bit about the DataDev program, extending Tableau with the API set, and what you can do along the way. So of course, this is just a 20-minute session. I can't go through all the APIs and all the things, so feel free anytime, reach out if you have questions, but we'll go ahead and get started. So a little bit more about myself. My name is Zak Geis. I lead the Tableau COE for JP Morgan Chase, which essentially means that I get to live and breathe Tableau every day. My team and I focus on delivering best practices with Tableau, enabling the firm with Tableau content and delivery. We do all sorts of training. We automate tools with the API set that we're going to talk about today. We own the infrastructure, all the Tableau servers. We run the Tableau desktop programs, all the kind of things that we need for Tableau, goes through my team. So we have a lot of breadth of experience in all things Tableau. My contact information is right there. I'm very active on Twitter, my email. Feel free anytime, reach out if you have questions. I'd be happy to talk with you. I'm also desktop and server certified, so I like to think that I know at least a little bit about both sides of Tableau. Here's a little bit of my work. The only reason I show this is, I feel like usually when you work with people, they're either server side or desktop side. I like to think that I'm a good mixture of both, and I think that you can be too. So even if you feel like you're mostly on the design side or the analytical side, you can definitely learn the API side and vice versa. For example, that bottom chart with the NBA shots, that's really just me working with the NBA's APIs and understanding what's going on in that data and pulling down shot locations and then turning that into Tableau content. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunities to expand into, you know, one side or the other if you feel, you know, the urge to do so. And then finally, as Sagar mentioned, I'm very excited to say I am part of the inaugural wave of the Tableau DataDev Ambassador Program. I put the screenshot up there. So this is, you know, the full group of us that was elected this year. I'm very excited to, you know, help to drive forward and innovate and show what the data dev side of Tableau can do. I think that there's, you know, a lot of things that are really, we've only touched the surface of what you can do with the API set. I'm excited to help push that forward. And, you know, as I mentioned, this part of this just means that I like to talk about this. So anybody that's on the line, if you want to learn more, feel free anytime, just reach out to me. All right, so that said, let's actually get into some content here. So the first thing I want to do is introduce you to the DataDev Developer Program for Tableau. So this is a really important part of what Tableau's done to promote this side of Tableau. What this means is if you go and you sign up, just, you know, look at, and I'll actually share the link at the end of the presentation. But if you hop in here and you go to tableau.com/developer, you'll see all this information about the DataDev program. And a few things that are most important about this is, number one, the community. You'll kind of be automatically ingrained in the community, including myself and the other ambassadors and other people that are passionate about the DataDev program. You will be part of the newsletter and kind of you'll automatically get invited to things like the sessions where they'll show new and upcoming features and things like that. And also, which I'm going to be hitting at across this whole presentation, you get your own sandbox area on Tableau Online to play with, where you're automatically an admin. You can automatically use all the things that I'm going to show you throughout this presentation. So there's no real harm in doing it. I would say go ahead if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Just join now. You'll automatically be in there. You'll get assigned all the things that go with that. Now, there's a ton of Tableau developer tools. And I'm going to flip over here to another page. This is just developer/tools. There's a lot of things that go into data dev. You know, sometimes it's thought of as, hey, you can embed, hey, you can do some REST functions. But if you scroll through here, you're going to see that there's a lot of things. There's 5 specific areas or capabilities of the data dev program. And that includes connectivity, automation, data science, embedded analytics, and extensibility. So data connectivity is all about being able to connect to data sources, even if they're not native inside of Tableau, and you have to maybe do a little bit of programmatic work to get there. So this allows you to connect, for example, to web data sources on the web. If there's a, you know, an endpoint out there that you can't connect to natively, and you need to, for example, put out some JSON data or things of that nature, you can use the web data plugin to basically code your own connector, and it's very simple to do so. You can build your own open database connectivity, you know, build your own ODBC connections. You can go through and actually programmatically create an extract or update an extract with a Hyper and Extract API set. With Hyper, there came a lot of new functionality where you can actually treat it almost like a database, where you can do things like insert statements, update statements, and delete statements and things like that, but you can do it programmatically through API sets. The automation side, we'll talk a little bit more about a couple things here, specifically REST, where you can make those RESTful sort of commands on Tableau server. You can, you know, build a process to automatically remove users, delete stale content, create projects automatically, things of that nature you can do. Other things like the document API, where you can, you know, automatically modify Tableau files. If you need to change parameters or things like that, you can automatically do that. Webhooks allow you to chain events based on what's happening in Tableau, send alerts, things like that. A lot of integration with data science, if that's your thing, so you can connect and actually connect to data sources and data pipelines in R and Python, MATLAB, and now with the new Analytics Extensions API, pretty much anything, Pascal, other languages that you might be interested in that data science side. Another side that I'll be talking about a little bit more is the embedded analytics side. So you can, of course, embed Tableau. You can build in two-way communication between Tableau and another application of just using the JavaScript API. And I'll touch on that in a little bit more detail here soon. And then finally, like I said, the extensibility. So this is really the extension side. And you've probably seen these before, but this is where you're actually building full kind of web interactive applications into your dashboard. So building things like right back into Tableau, building things like natural language generation and processing into Tableau. There's basically anything that you would need the data inside of a workbook to power something else. This offers that functionality. So like I said, we don't have a lot of time, so I can't touch on all of these. I'd love to go through a little bit more detail, show examples of everything, but I've kind of chosen 3 that I think make the most sense as areas to kind of focus on. The first of which I'm going to do is the JavaScript API. So a couple things that I'm going to talk through with the JavaScript API is first, with each of these, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can learn a little bit more. And then I'm going to show a little bit of example code and what you can do with it. So this is, if you search for the JavaScript API inside of Tableau, you're probably going to find yourself over to this page, which is the help area of Tableau's support guide. And it talks about overview tutorials, has some sample code, things like that. Essentially, there's just a few things that you build into your code to embed a Tableau view into it via JavaScript. You're going to, script in a connection to their actual API file. So that I'll actually show this in code here in a minute. You're going to create a div element that connects back into what's called a Viz container, so that you can actually call that inside of your code. A simple function just to initialize the viz. And I know this may be going over your head a little bit, but again, we'll go back to the code here in a moment. And then down in your actual code, you're going to initialize the viz. And then it looks something like this. So not anything too special happening here. It's really just this is a page, or Tableau workbook that's embedded inside of a web page. Now, there's a couple ways that you can proceed from here. The one that I would recommend if I were starting new is jumping right into the tutorial, which brings you over to here. So this is kind of cool because it's interactive and allows you to actually see the code change throughout the different tutorials, where we can start first with creating a viz, and we can run this code, and it's just, honestly, it's bare bones. It's just gonna show you here is a viz that is loaded inside of a frame. I'll actually refresh, it's probably just typed out on me. So that starts you off here, you start the tutorial, and then you run this code. We'll see that open, and voila, very, very fantastic stuff. But again, this goes through step by step. So the biggest principle of the JavaScript API is that not only you can embed things, but you can have things interact outside of the frame with the frame. So for example, if I go into filter and we check the second one and I run this code, I can actually, have different things out here. I think it's down here. I run this code. It's actually passing in a filter dynamically through here. At this point, I'm going to actually flip over to some code. So I've got quite a few things up here, and realize one of those things is not the JavaScript stuff. I'm just going to go in here real quick and open this up. So this is going to, for the most part, align back with that tutorial. This is Visual Studio Code. If you're not familiar, I definitely recommend it. So this allows me to see what's going on. So it's mostly that stuff that I mentioned. I have right here where I'm calling that JavaScript file. I'm saying the source of everything I'm doing when I reference it is this file sitting right here. You could obviously swap this, well, not obviously, but you could swap this out with a version that's stored on your local Tableau environment, so you're not connecting outside of your firm. Typically, Tableau is going to install automatically if you just reference the same point on your own local server. And then you can go in here and see the same kind of stuff. So we're initializing the viz right here. We've got a couple of different things that are happening here. So here's a URL that we're referencing. We've got some different things like the width and stuff like that. And then in the body, we actually initialize what we're doing up here, and we have a div ID that actually opens it up. So if I take this now and just hop over to my desktop. Just one second. There we go. And we'll go into, there it is. I know where it was hiding. And I'll just go into these and I'll open these up just like anything else inside of my browser. So this opens up. It looks a lot like what I had before, where I'm just initializing a viz. It's something that I wanted to use instead. And again, we can go through here and these align back, so I can do a filter and I can have things pass in. So I specifically chose to have a button, which I think represents what you can do inside the JavaScript API is, click something outside of the frame and pass it into this. This little button right here is not in Tableau. This is just in my browser. And you can get pretty advanced with this. You can go into, what if we wanted to do a select and actually, chain maybe a story and build a story inside of our dashboard. We could go, okay, filter to Ohio. That's where I'm at. Add a couple states. Let's make sure that we're only at things that are above 10%. Let's clear it out. So a lot of things you can pass in, and then you can do other things. Like you could build a full application that does things and has nice buttons for PDF and exporting data and other things like that, and building an actual application outside of Tableau. And the thing that I think highlights this the best is this last one, which is actually taking the data that you're clicking on and passing it outside of the Tableau frame. So if I click on a few of these states, you're actually going to see it saying, okay, take this data and pass it out here. And then this is where I can use it and pass it into the app. And maybe I want to have that, generate a form for you or something like that. I could do different things now that I can actually expose the data from the frame outside of that Tableau Viz object into the browser itself. So there's a lot of things you can do with this. And again, time limited, it's hard to show the real power of the JavaScript API, but just essentially think of it as two-way communication. You can pass things into the dashboard. You can also pass them out. And there's a lot of, endless potential in that area of being able to pass the data back and forth. Okay, so that was number one. Next, we're going to move into the REST API. So if you're not familiar with the concept of RESTful endpoints and how those happen, how those work, essentially we're just passing a command to a server, and the server's doing something based on that command. It's really that simple. So what I'm going to do is show a couple examples of this. So the first thing actually is I'll go back to my browser. And just like the JavaScript, Tableau has a built-in tutorial set for this. And I really like this tutorial set because it talks through, what are some tools that you'll want to use and other things that will be useful if you wanted to do more with the REST endpoint. Now, this specifically is very useful if you do go through that DataDev program and get that site. Everything that I'm going to do from this point forward is using my own personal site. And I'll hop into that first just to show how this works. So here is my own personal sandbox site on Tableau Online. And again, I get that just by signing up for the DataDev program. And I'm an admin and I can do anything on here. I can change the settings, I can connect to things, I can test all these APIs. Pretty much anything that I would want to do, I can test here. So it's really perfect if you just want a no frills place where you can just test things, not worry about hurting anything else. This is a great place to do that. So I definitely recommend that. So everything I'm going to show you here is going to be working off of this site. So a couple things with the REST API inside of Tableau. The first thing is I recommend you to work with the different things that they recommend here. So specifically installing Postman. So Postman is a utility that's used to test APIs on the web. And it just kind of simplifies the whole process, and I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to flip over to Postman, and this is what it looks like. The great thing about this is Tableau actually has already provided and created a set of sample commands that it's as simple as just loading them into this, and you get access to a whole set of APIs that you can test. So you'll see in here, I go into Tableau REST, and I've got the ability to look at data sources and query the data sources, delete them, add them, check the favorites of the user, do any sort of group functions and publish things to the server, things like that, all just built in, and all I got to do is just change a couple variables to be specific to me. And essentially, if you just look for Tableau Postman collection, then you can find that information and upload it. the way that this works is pretty much with any command that we call for the REST service on Tableau, the first thing we do is we sign in. And so I actually brought this up. I'll start one fresh over here. So this one right here. So just so you didn't actually see my password, I used the personal access token, which is another way to log into Tableau now. But essentially all of these are the same, and you can ignore all the stuff that I've said if you want to focus on here. This is how you start one. Basically, you have the endpoint or the URL that you're going to hit, and at the same time, you're passing in a couple variables. So it's really not too hard. Like when I open this up, I just plug it in with my URL. I go in here and I type in my token and my token password, and this could be your name and your password, and then I hit send. This is actually hitting my Tableau online server, and it came back and said, here's your site ID, and here's your content, here's your user ID, and most importantly, here is your credential token. So this is going to be valid for, I think it's 90 minutes by default. And so I would chain this into my next command. So to log in through anything else, to actually do anything like creating a user or creating a project, I need this token. So I'm going to copy this, and I'll go into something else. For example, let's say that I want to create a project. So I go to here to project, and I'm gonna, actually let's create a site. No, I can't create a site in this. I wanted to, the only reason I'm not wanting to do that is it's already filled in with some stuff that I did, but that's okay. So a couple things that I would do here. So the first thing is I would grab the site and plug that into the URL. So if I go back here, again, that's something that I received in the response. I would copy this and just paste it up here into that. And then a couple other things I would do is make sure that my header token is correct. So I can go in here and make sure that my token, which I think is down here now. I think it actually retained it from my last call, so that's okay. So I'm gonna call this my new project. I think I left one that I tested with earlier this morning. I'll just call it 10, and then I'll hit send. So it actually comes back and says a new project was created with the REST API. It tells me when it was created, and it gives me a project ID. So if I actually go over here to Tableau server again, and I hop into that project or that site, and I look at the Explorer, I look at the project, you'll see my new project 10. And it actually created a project for me. And just to kind of nail this through, so there's so much that you can do here. You can create a process. So for example, you click a button, it creates a project, creates 80 groups, adds users to the list, gives them all the permissions, and then they're good to go without me ever touching the Tableau server. You can create a process that programmatically deploys content. If you've seen any of the Tableau tools that do deployments from one server to another, they're just using this API. They're just using a lot of complex things and layering of these different API calls, putting a nice user interface in front of it, on top of it, and then allowing you to just basically dictate what do these API sets do. So chaining these all together, there's so many possibilities that you can do. The last one that I want to go through is the metadata API. This one's pretty new. And I actually think this is a lot of fun to play with. It's kind of interesting to see how this one works. So the metadata API is available if you are on a Tableau server and you have any sort of admin access. So if you go into your server and you just kind of back out of a lot of this stuff, and what you want to do is just go into metadata and then graphical. So it's kind of odd, graph IQL, and then you hit enter. As long as your server is on 2019.4 or above, and you're an admin, site admin, I think maybe project leader as well, you can get to the screen. So what is this? This allows you to programmatically look at what's happening and what is available on your server. You can check the list of workbooks, the list of users, the list of owners. You can check upstream and downstream, effects. So for example, you want to look at a data source and say, if I change this data source, what workbooks might be affected by that change? You could easily create a script to do this. One of the examples that we built recently, there was a DataDev challenge set, and I built one that basically was, it checked to see the fields that were inside of the workbooks, checked if any of them were, not named well, if they were just like calculation 1, 2, 3, 4, chained that through into emailing the owner and just basically saying, hey, you need to change these fields or we're going to remove it. So there's again, just so many possibilities here. To talk about the screen in front of me, there's a few things, and this is why I think this is fun to play with. Number one, the history over here is on the left, so I want to look back at the things that I've called before. I can do that. Here is the actual, query screen where I can write things through. I can just, start typing in here, and it's going to actually, autocomplete and other things. And very helpful is the kind of schema explorer over here. So I can go over here and say, okay, I know that I want something about workbooks, but I don't know what to do. And it's going to tell you kind of all the fields you can select. And the format here is really simple. It's like you don't really need to know how to code to do this. It's just basically, it's always going to be query, and I'm querying the fields, and in the fields give me the ID, name, description. And if I run this, I get this return back in a JSON data set, which just says, here's my fields, here's the ID of it, here's the name, and here's the description. And again, it's real easy to do this. So if I wanted to create another one, and I'm just going to say, I want the workbook. We were looking at that. And within the workbooks, I want the name. I want the project name and the site. I know that it's not going to like that I have two. So a simple trick here is I'll just give this name 1. And down here, I'll give this one name 2. Then I can just go up here, and when I hit run, it's going to give me the option, what do you want to run? So name 2, and I get this data set back, and it says, all right, here's your workbooks, here's the name of the workbook, the project name, the site, where the site is attached to, and so forth. And the coolest thing is I can take this data now, and I can say, I want to look at this data in my friendly Tableau format. So I can just plug this into a file, and as long as I save it as a JSON file, we'll say workbooks.json, can save that, and then I can jump over. I think I got Tableau open, connect to data, go into JSON. Don't know where I saved that. Sorry, 1 second. Let's throw a copy on my desktop. And I'll just go to my desktop, and now I've got workbooks. And I can now connect to all this data and look at inside of Tableau and start looking at this. Not a lot of data, but if I had, for example, field level information or other things like that, I could build something that had all that data, analyze it, return it back to my users and say, hey, I've noticed you've done this, et cetera, et cetera. And you can programmatically do these things too. So just because I'm doing it here inside of the UI on Tableau, you can still build an actual command set and script this and combine it with the REST API to do different things. So there's a lot of potential in this one as well. And I think this one hasn't been used as often. It's relatively new, but there's so much here. It's really powerful, and it's really interesting stuff. So encourage you to take a look at that. Okay, so like I said, I only have 20 so minutes, so that's about as much time as I have to talk about these different things, but there's a whole different set of all these different things that you can do with the developer tools. I encourage you to, like I said, take a look at the different links that I've said. Specifically, tableau.com/developer is the site where you can sign up for the DataDev program. DataDev program information for the developer tools and things like that. And also, I like to recommend, just looking at the GitHub account for, excuse me, Tableau, where they have a lot of source codes. They have examples of these different APIs and so forth. So with that said, I think we're going to leave questions to the end. So appreciate your time. Really looking forward to what Mike has to show with us.
Thank you. Thank you, Zak, for that program. Let me just go ahead and introduce Mike. So Mike's Tableau journey began several years ago when a former employer made the decision to introduce Tableau as a corporate standard reporting tool. Since being introduced to Tableau, Mike has become a self-proclaimed Tableau addict. Mike became an active participant of both Tableau public and Tableau social media community early in the year. Mike was recently recognized as a Tableau public featured author. Without further ado, I will just hand it over to Mike.
All right. Like the first off, thanks Sagar and the VizConnect team for having me today. This is a honor for me because this is the first time I've been able to do any kind of presenting. So I thank you very much for this opportunity. So with that, let's get started. And let's go with the PowerPoint. So today I'm going to talk about plotting data points to background images using Tableau. In looking at the visualizations, they seem very difficult, but it's very easy method. And I'm actually going to show you how simple that is today. And this agenda is basically just going to do a brief talk about myself, which Sagar has pretty much done most of that. I'm also going to talk about making the case for plotting background images. Is it really the right thing to do for what's needed, or are there easier methods? And then last, I'm actually going to do the demo because it's so easy, I should have enough time to do it. So just to reiterate about myself, I started off as a project data analyst, just doing basic reporting to project leads and project leaders on their status of the projects. And as I had the opportunity to use Tableau, coming from an Excel background, it was just a complete transition for me because I really liked Tableau. I loved how easy it was to use as opposed to using Excel, and I've just been using it ever since. And then becoming a part of the Tableau community, that really helped me be more efficient with my Tableau usage, and then also being able to come up with different ways and methods to use Tableau to do different things. And this led to becoming a Tableau public featured author just recently, which I'm very honored by that. So in making the case for using, excuse me, I have a very sensitive keyboard here. So in making the case for plotting images and using a background image, let me just talk about some of the pros and cons to that. So for pros, it's a very simple solution. You can use it to make specialized charts, which do come in handy when you need that level of detail. Say, for instance, with various sports related charts. As you can see, I have some examples here where you may want to do an example based on soccer, goal shots on goal, or also have a visualization here that was based on baseball, where hitting percentages are. And then there's also things like radar charts that may need a specific type of background to overlay the visualization on. So with that, a background image would be ideal in this situation. Plus, you're dictating the scale to Tableau, so it's completely customizable and scalable to whatever image you're trying to use. Some cons with it: it can get very time consuming depending on what you're trying to do and the level of detail associated with it. Good example of this is if you're trying to map to, say, for instance, a US map. there's a lot of detail with that because you're trying to identify specific states, or if you're trying to go to an even more granular level of detail, it may not be ideal. So in that case, you may want to use other options, other methods, like say, for instance, just using the built-in mapping that comes with Tableau, or even bringing in a shapefile for that matter, as those may be better, less time-consuming options. So when we're building the visualization here, I'm going to show you how easy it is. I'm actually going to rebuild the visualization that I used for one of my previous Makeover Monday submissions. Actually, this is going to be week 33, which I did a visualization showing the amount of digital companies in Scotland and the various cities within Scotland. And with the data set that was presented with the week 33 Makeover Monday, I'm going to use these two items that you see here, which is background image as well as pre-calculated coordinates. And the reason I'm using pre-calculated coordinates is because this actually took a little bit of time to map to the image. So just for time constraints here, I already have them presented just so we can, put together the visualization within the allotted time. So with that, let me actually transition over to Tableau. And as you can see, we already have the Makeover Monday data set brought in for time constraints. So what I'm also going to do is I have those coordinates preloaded to a Excel flat file. And as that loads, I'm going to bring that in and just join that with the data set based on the region. I believe I had it called position in the file. So let's do that. And of course, it's going to want us to create an extract, which I will do here. All right. So now we've got all our data that we need. And at this point, we just need the image. So to bring that image in, we'll go to mapping and background image. And we're going to add an image that I have saved to my local computer here. And so what it's doing now is it's bringing the image in, and it's asking us, okay, well, how do we want to overlay coordinates to it? So what we're going to do is, and I normally create a scale to 500, 0 to 500 for both X and Y. This isn't a requirement. You can set it to whatever you want. This is just how I learned how to do it. You can use any 0 to whatever maximum scale you want. So with that, hit apply just to make sure it's taken, and hit OK, and then hit OK there. And bring in X on the columns, and we'll bring in Y on the rows. And you can see it's a very wide scale at the moment, so we're going to put that to max because, and I'll show you in a second why. So this is the actual file here that we brought in. And so you can see max range here is 500. So that's why we want to do the scale at 500. But as you can see, we have all of the pre-calculated coordinates, which should show up on our map here once we bring it in. So we have our scale now. So now all we got to do is bring in the image, which remember we joined on region. So we'll bring that into detail. And that brings in our coordinates. And just give me 1 second here because the image did not show. It should be showing at this point. Oh, and I see why. We can't have two y coordinates, so we have to make one x. There we go. So now we got our x and our y. Apply. And we should have our image. But if you notice, the scale is a little off. So what we want to do here, do some cleanup. I'm going to go into options. I'm going to take off that lock aspect ratio. So it's not always ideal, but we'll see how it looks. I believe in this one, it's going to make it fit the entire width of the screen. So that's why I'm doing it here. Oh, did I make it disappear again? Okay. Apologize again. I do have a sensitive keyboard. Okay, so now we have our background image, and we've got our visualization overlaid to scale. And as we hover, you'll see the region. In this case, it's highlands and islands, and we'll see the coordinates, which are x is 200 and y is 300, which matches this exactly. So the good thing about this, having a separate file, there's other ways to do this. You can, if you wanted to, you could do this completely within Tableau, but I choose to have the separate file because if we need to make any modifications or adjustments, say for instance, if you feel like where the actual data point ended up is not exactly where it needs to be, you can just go into this file and make that change, and then refresh the extract, and that's it. So it is a lot of trial and error at first, especially with items like this, because I'll admit I'm not very familiar with the country of Scotland. So I had to do a little bit of research to figure out exactly where these cities were located within the country. And then it was a matter of just trying to fit it to the image. So now that you see the data points, we do have some options here as far as how you want to present those data points. For now, it defaulted to the shape, but you can do any particular type of shape you want. You can do squares. You can even bring in a random shape if you wanted to, and it would work. And then with these shapes, we can even alter them based on whatever measures we have. In this case, it's the number of companies. So if we want to bring that to the side, then that will give us our visualization that we had prior, which I have that here. So here you can see that we use a similar method just to kind of give a visualization of the size of amount of companies that are in each city. And we're going to keep it like that for now. That's it. I believe I used, instead of shape circle. I actually used circle. So with that, we make it white. And let's make it a little transparent here. Bring it down to 20. Give it a border. Let's make that look a little bit more. Okay. Looks good. All right. So we have our background. We have our data points to scale. So we no longer need the actual scale itself. And so we can hide that. So now all that's left, looking at the finished product, are just the annotations. So let's go ahead and add a couple of those. So annotate, mark, and it's going to bring in all the data that you put into the visualization. So do we need all that? No. We don't necessarily need the coordinates, so we can get rid of that. And we'll just make that a lighter shade so that it'll show against that dark background. And now we just do a quick format of the annotation. So I think we used a single edge, took out the shading. And just put in a border for that edge. And there we go. So, and just to reiterate, I'll do another one. So annotate, mark, take out those coordinates. Single edge box. Take out that shading. To that light color there. Okay, so it really is just that easy. So all that's left now is to just add that to a dashboard, which in this case I'm going to lay down a container. Going to add our visualization here. And we're going to get rid of scale. This entire view, okay. And we just add some spacing here, just as a reserve. And you can shape this however it needs to be shaped. Since we have it as entire view, we fit this to scale. But in this instance, I just used simple dots, but you can really use any kind of visualization. You can even get really fancy if you wanted to, and have it draw custom lines if you wanted to. But with that, I mean, that is really all there is to it. So hopefully this gives you some ideas to work with going forward. And with that, I appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so if you have any questions, just go ahead put in the chat or the Q&A tab. Happy to ask Zach and Mike about it. So Zach, I have the first question from Sidal. He's asking you about, can the Tableau APIs, so if you want to go ahead and pull data from Twitter, can we use the REST APIs?
Yeah. So absolutely. So the big principle with all this stuff is, I would say, look out there and see what's already available. The thing that I didn't mention, because we didn't touch much on the web data connectors, is that would be a good thing for this, because there are people that have actually already promoted and created their own web data connectors that do all the work. So, for example, there's one out there for Twitter where essentially they've already done the code. All you do is you connect to a URL, which is the web data connector, and then you plug in your information, your ID and your password and things. And then it'll pull the data back. The thing specific about Twitter that I would say is Twitter is, they're pretty regulated on how much data you can pull back. So I think for example, theirs is like, you can't get more than like 5,000 records at a time. So just something to keep in mind. But yeah, you can connect to anything that has web data, you can connect to it from a web data connector.
Okay. Thank you, Zach. So Mike, everyone is asking you about the coordinates. So what was the process on getting those coordinates? Do you want to talk about it a little?
Yeah, absolutely. So in this case, you really have to think of the coordinates as a scatter plot. So that's what you're doing. And with this particular instance, I had to kind of look at a map of Scotland to identify where the cities were, and then map them to the actual image itself. So when you're looking at the predetermined or the scale that you created, so in this instance, I created a 0 to 500, both X and Y. It's a matter of identifying where in that scale the point should be to identify that, roughly identify where that city is, where that location is.
Okay, thank you. And Zach, there is a question for you. Can we use REST API for Python models?
For Python models. So I would assume that's kind of in the statistical side. So what you can do is you can connect to actual like Python servers. So if you have something that's set up that actually exposes like a parameterized code module, you can actually have Tableau connect to that and then pass data into that, and then the response or return of that calculation in Python can be presented in Tableau. It's actually focused less on the REST API side and more on the integration with Python side, which is the data science tool. But definitely there's some materials to look on that. But basically, as long as you have Tableau server, you have a Python server that's set up with, and you have TabPy, which is the Tableau specific Python language. As long as you have those all set up, you could do something like that for sure.
Thank you, Zach. And Zach, I have one question for you.
Okay.
With respect to governance. So how does these APIs help you out with respect to governance in your Tableau server?
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to talk about that? Yeah.
So it's going to completely depend on which thing you're looking at. So for example, if you're doing a REST API, that is essentially, you're just doing the same thing that you do on Tableau server, but programmatically. So it's the same permissions that you have. So if you can create a project, if you can deploy a workbook, you can do it programmatically in the REST API. Other things sometimes take more privileges. For example, if you get more complex in a REST API, you can impersonate others' permissions to kind of build like a view of what they can see. That's something that you would need something that has more of an admin level access. Other things like JavaScript API, you don't really need anything special to do that. The web data connectors, which we were kind of just talking about, the biggest thing there is at a server level, they need to be whitelisted. So you have to work with a server admin to allow access to that specific location of the web data connector. But other than that, you can do that kind of stuff. So it's going to be dependent on the different API, whether you have access or not. But as long as you have some sort of elevated permission, you can do everything, but you can still do a lot of things even with a regular level permission.
Thank you, Zach, for that.
Mhm.
And I think the last few minutes we have, I will just turn over to you, Zach and Michael. If you want to share something with anyone who's starting their journey with Tableau, what will be your advice to them? Zach, you can go first. And what is the role of a mentor in your life? That is one thing, maybe if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot to unpack in 3 minutes, but sure, I can try. So, I've been using Tableau for almost 10 years now. And I think that the biggest thing that I always push on, and you probably already know this if you're on the session, is community. Tableau has such a vibrant, amazing community that has so many facets and so many great people that are always interested in helping. So if there's somebody that you're interested in learning from and you realize, hey, they're doing great work. Hey, I want to learn more from Mike and how he's doing the different mapping things. And hey, I want to learn from Zach and the APIs. We're always happy to talk and help in any way. And that leads into the second part of that is, there's so many mentors that I could say. There's a lot of different people that have impacted my career, specifically at work. There's been a lot of people and also in the community. It's finding those people that you gel well with. And specifically, it's a good time to shout out. I know that we just mentioned Vinod has helped take over some of this. So there is the mentoring aspect of this as well. So if you search on the community and you look for the mentoring site, I'm actually spacing on what it's called right now, but you can actually make that formal and connect with a mentor. I'm on the site, others are on the site as well. So definitely look at that, and I can work with Sagar to make sure that that's presented out here if it hasn't already been as well.
Thank you, Zach. Mike, you want to?
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking off of what Zach said, and pretty much I think everybody agrees to this, that getting involved in the community is probably the most important thing. I've been a Tableau user myself for about 5 or 6 years, but have only been involved in the community for the past year. But in that past year, I have learned so much from what I learned in the previous 4 or 5 years in using Tableau. Just in talking with various people, everybody in the community seems to have a different aspect, a different view, a different piece to everything. And just in getting involved and talking with those people, just it gives you so much more perspective in using Tableau. And then the mentoring part just really reiterates all of that. It really just brings it all together. So I highly recommend both those pieces for anybody that's new and coming into Tableau.
Perfect. With that, thank you, Zach. Thank you, Mike, for coming and presenting on Wisconnect. It was an honor to have you.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you for everyone for joining. We'll see you next week with another session. Take care. Be safe. Bye-bye.